Your opinion is more powerful than any fact. It was Albert Einstein that said, "A problem cannot be solved with the same mind that created it." Thank you for joining me today on the High IQ Genius podcast. I'm Robert Kayan, and I'll be your host. I am a life member of Mensa, which means I have tested in the top 2% of the populace in terms of my IQ. Additionally, I'm a member of Intertel. Now, they're different. The membership for Intertel requires that you test in the top 1% of the populace or the world. That places me in the top 1% of the most intelligent people on earth. Now, as I've always said, intelligence is the way you process information. Being smart is how you use it. And someone who is smart has a distinct advantage over somebody with a high IQ. Today, let's talk about why one of the most important forces in your life is your opinion. And while your opinion drives your decisions and facts don't hold up to your scrutiny, it's called cognitive bias. We all have it. And cognitive bias means that when presented with facts that do not support your opinion, we as humans will reject any fact or data that doesn't support our opinion. And why that's so important in your life. You know, Bill Murray once said, "It's very difficult to win an argument with an intelligent person, but it's nearly impossible to win an argument with a stupid person." And if we look at that closer, we can really understand the importance of a person's opinion. In fact, there was a study done where a jury was assembled and people were recruited to become part of a mock trial. Now, the people that were recruited did not know the trial was a mock trial. And when they were presented with the evidence of a person's case and they rendered their decision, in this case, let's say they rendered a guilty verdict, and then they were presented with contrary evidence that dispelled any doubt that the person was guilty and they were in fact innocent, they were asked to go back, reconsider the new evidence, and come out with a new verdict. Surprisingly, the verdict stood the same: guilty. And conversely, when people were presented, jurors, in this mock trial with evidence of a person's guilt, and they had already found them innocent of the crime, asked to go back, reconsider the evidence, and come back with a new verdict, surprisingly, they came back with the same decision: innocent. And this is what we call cognitive bias. When you're presented with evidence or data in a particular scenario that doesn't support your opinion, then we reject it. Now, let's take, for example, this year's election. And let me be clear, this podcast is not going to take a side on this political issue. We're merely going to discuss what happened and the results. Now, what this means is, with the recent election, both sides were presented with a specific amount of facts and data. One side was presented with facts and data, and they chose to elect a new president. The other side was presented with opinions and outlooks, and they decided to elect their candidate. But what can be certain is the person that was elected was based on a person's opinion of the facts. You see, we all make decisions based on emotions. And then we go back and reason with the facts on why we made that decision. This is called cognitive bias. So I want to be clear today. Let's take, for example, advice. Everyone asks for advice at some point in their life. But in reality, a person doesn't want your advice because it's very rare that a person will actually take your advice. And we've all been in this scenario before. What people truly want is they want you to support their opinion. And that really is the key to understanding the dilemma between opinion and facts. You know, my grandmother, whom I will quote from time to time, was one of the most remarkable people I'd ever met. And she used to say, it's better to shut up and let people think you're a fool than to speak and dispel all doubt. So we're always surrounded by people's opinions, and we're always bombarded with the facts. And this podcast today is designed to show you that your opinion is more powerful than any intellectual, any genius, or anybody with a high IQ. Because ultimately, you're going to make a decision based on your cognitive bias. Regardless of the facts and regardless of the data, you will come to your own decision. Now, what we often find in life is the decision that we made was the decision that we wanted, but it didn't turn out to be the best decision of our life. And you know, there's an old saying, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. You know, another quote, or I shouldn't say quote, but another thing my grandmother used to say was, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift, and that's why they call it the present. And I think it really has followed me in my life, because in order to find true happiness, we must be present. We must live in the moment. And in this podcast, if I can help one person be present, to live a more fulfilling life, to find a path to happiness and success, then I have fulfilled my accomplishments. Now, I will also add, in my last video, I mentioned that nobody cares. And I got a lot of comments on that video. In fact, it got more views than any of my prior videos. And what I found out is there are people that care. And they were kind enough to leave comments on that video. So I want to thank each and every one of those people that took the time to comment. I do read your comments, and it does impact the content of this podcast. And additionally, we were featured in the Mensa Bulletin this month. I had mentioned that it was going to be featured, our High IQ Genius podcast would be featured in January, but in fact, it made it to the November-December dual issue. So the High IQ Genius podcast has been featured in the Mensa Bulletin. We're going to be making some improvements as we go. I am so grateful that you've taken the time to listen. It really is important for each person to take away what they think is valuable and go forward in your life to be the best version you can be. So, I'd like to close this episode of the High IQ Genius podcast with some thoughts, and that is, everyone in life deserves their own opinion. And while it might not be right for another person, it's right for them. And so I take the position that no one is ever wrong, but they might not be right together. Be happy. Be awesome. Be the best version of yourself that you can be. And remember, at the end of the day, it's you against the world, and I'm betting on you.